We on, mate.
We on, mate.
We on, mate.
We out here. Am I the bottom? Classic. What else is new? What else is new?
What else is new?
Bottom and proud.
Sick fuck. That'll do for now. Check. Yeah, we look fine. Whatever. Don't care. Who cares? What's up?
Hello, Mr. Smith.
Mr. and Mrs. Okay.
Oh, God.
All right.
A deep, heavy sigh.
We're going to welcome back. Can you untangle your cord and just get it together? All right. Couple things you got to get out of the way first.
Yeah.
Got to welcome back to the pod Akiva Goldsman and Simon Kinberg.
Yeah, baby.
Two of our friends of the podcast.
Oh,
two
Simon,
of our
Mr.
favorite
Kinberg.
creators of things.
At it again.
Now, we're talking about where this is the low ceiling. I'm Jon. You're Pri. Don't even start. We're talking about the film Mr. and Mrs. Smith, now an Amazon Prime television show starring Donald Glover and Maya Erskine. And this movie is bad.
Okay, go. You know what? Do your piece.
Go off.
Because I got thoughts, but you go first.
I thought because of I watched so you watched the first episode of the Prime show.
Yeah.
It was good, right?
It was good, and it was very different from the show already.
Yeah. So the thing I realized having watched like the few bits that I saw, which was mostly like this very like Donald Glover style thing where he's like laying very wistfully on a bed being like, oh man, I just laid here.
Yeah.
And you're here. What's up, boo? And it's like this very weird millennial vibe of just like, wow, we chilling, but also we're spies.
It's like sexy to be tired.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this bed in this magnificently appointed apartment that we shouldn't really be able to afford. It's just, it's a very like
spy money.
It's a very Donald Glover kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Donald Glover is like the millennial of millennials.
Yeah.
He's like the foremost millennial in my opinion right now.
Man is culture himself.
Yeah. But anyway, and I was looking back and I was like, okay, this movie, I was like, so this show is based on this movie. This movie's directed by Doug Liman, who I want to talk about.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was written by Simon Kinberg, my favorite writer. But I was like, maybe this movie's good. Maybe it's good. And then I watched it and I was like, the first scene where they're in therapy, I was like, is this movie really good? I mean, it's from 2005. We all know what that means.
That's right. As soon as it starts off, without a doubt, we're like, oh, this looks like a good movie.
Yeah, but it turns out the only good thing about this movie is the idea. It becomes okay, I'm going to use a term that I don't quite mean the way I normally mean it. It becomes like unwatchable as it goes on. And what I mean by that is like I had it on upon my second viewing just around while I was like bopping around the house doing chores and shit. Mm-hmm. And I just like I never paused to look and be like, hey, what's going on? Because it's nothing is happening. Like it's such an uncharismatic visual film.
Yeah.
Which is shocking because
that's right.
It stars Angelina and Brad.
Two of the hottest people on the face of the planet, especially in 2005.
At that time, yes.
And so when I watched this movie, I immediately put myself in 2005 frame of mind. Okay. I no longer watched it as the age I am now, but I watched it as the age I was then.
Yeah.
And that puts it into perspective of why this movie was such a fucking culture reset.
Such a huge deal at the time.
A massive deal.
Well, okay. So I'm sure lots of people remember this, but when I was in 2004, before this movie came out, big, like much music was on in my room all the time. Much music being the Canada equivalent of MTV.
Much music.
Yeah. And at that time it became like a half music, half fucking gossip channel.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt and Angelina were like the focal point of it.
Oh yeah.
But this movie also, I didn't realize they weren't married at the time.
No.
Brad Pitt had just divorced.
But he was
Janiston.
single. He was single.
Right. Well, that's what they say.
Okay.
That's what they say. The rumors were that he had been they had been straight fucking on the set. Now that's just a
look
rumor.
At them.
Brad and Jennifer Aniston get divorced.
Yeah.
And he meets Angelina Jolie. They have an immediate connection. And it's on the set, right? And then we know that the movie's coming out next year. So all of the gossip that surrounded this film was just at an insane pitch. Like it was like absurd. Yeah.
Literal subcultures were created by just Brangelina coming into existence.
Huge thing.
Merch. Unofficial merch. Just like Hollywood posters. Like even the idea of like someone hot leaving someone for just as hot for another hotter it was.
I would argue this point is kind of like the peak of his career currently.
Yeah.
And he leaves a woman who was like
Hollywood
just
sweetheart.
leaving the peak of her career with Friends, if I recall, for a woman just entering the peak of her career, who also happens to be one of the most like
stunning, just like
horned after women in the world. Yeah,
Angelina Jolie Step on my neck challenge. Okay?
Yeah, dude.
She looks unreal in this movie, and so does he. They're both the chemistry. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It was the most beautiful thing for like nothing of essence.
He looks like he just stepped off the set of Ocean's 12, the movie we love.
Yeah.
Where he's almost hard to believe he's actually hotter in Ocean's 12 than he was in Ocean's 11.
Oh.
And he like stepped right off the set and went right into this film.
Just
in
gorgeous.
Which he has almost no charm or charisma. But like this movie is so bizarre because it's just like an exercise in gossip. It's not even a film.
Yeah.
Which is like a real shame because I have to give credit to Simon Kinberg. Like, it is a good idea.
Exactly.
For a blockbuster film from the aughts, it's a good idea.
Yeah. When it tried to have a plot, it was boring. But when it just had fun with like the action comedy with like them shooting 10 guys and then having a little, we're going to exchange a little witty banter as we drive through. You live for those 10-second interactions between every 10 minutes of like a fucking fight sequence. It's like, all right, man, we get it.
The movie should really, much like maybe what they're trying to achieve with the Prime show, is like the movie should be more vibes based, as we talk about, and less plot based. And I'll tell you, there's a couple big problems with the plot of this film. The movie starts way too late. And what I mean is like the point of the plot takes forever to get to.
Yeah.
And when I was watching this the first time, because I'd never seen it before, later in the film, when they meet Vince Vaughn at the diner, that's like traditionally where the film should actually start.
Correct.
They should have figured out who they were by this point.
Correct.
And then, but then the problem with that is between the two of them, there's no real antagonist. In the end, they're just shooting faceless SWAT guys.
Yeah.
Because there's no real enemy.
No.
There's no real villain.
No.
The interplay should be the vibes between Brad and Angelina, right? And they just don't do that. They just don't really achieve that. Yeah.
But is it a loss for the audience? I don't know if it is because we're just rooting for both of them.
My point is that at the time, the audience didn't care. They're just like, this is Brangelina the film.
Yeah, that's right. This is
Brangelina the film. And like,
damn right,
their relationship was just it was like the Taylor Swift Eras tour of its time.
My God, 100% right.
And obviously it culminated in that weird movie that they shot on their honeymoon that we talked about covering. I'm debating whether we should even bother, honestly. But
blast from the past.
By the Sea, I think it was called.
By the Sea, that's right. You talked about it. You told me. Yeah.
Well, I remember, as I often do, we were sitting silently, as I prefer to do in our home. And I just like out of the past, I was like, do you remember that movie that Brad and Angelina shot? And it was like directed by Angelina Jolie. And then I found out it was like they shot it on their honeymoon in Malta. And it was like, what are they? That can't bode well for the marriage that they got to go do a movie.
But they did everything else that they could for 24 hours straight. And now they're like, well, we have to walk it off, babe. So let's just go make a movie.
Have you ever seen I've never seen that movie, but have you ever seen the trailer for it?
God, no. I think I didn't know about his existence until I heard from you.
It looks like a Gucci commercial or something. Like it's like the if I remember correctly, it's like the waves like rolling up on the sand and like Brad is like sitting on a log on the beach like looking at the water while Angelina like walks on the wall behind him. It's like it doesn't even look like it has anything happening in it. It's like certainly I think it's weird because it's Angelina's first movie that she directed, which she went on to direct another movie we wanted to cover, the Unbroken. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
Yeah, and it just seems like a weird experimental film, but I'm sure it's like boring. Yeah.
You know who would make that 100% better?
Doug Liman.
Wait, an actor I'm thinking of.
Vince Vaughn.
Jared Leto.
Oh.
It just seems like he belongs in this. Hair in the wind.
Yeah, but you know
walking
what?
by the sea.
We already know who the new Jared Leto is, and it's Austin Butler. So, having just seen Dune 2 yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah,
Jared
he's a lot.
Leto.
He's a lot.
Less hair, more personality, that guy.
Yeah. No eyebrows, but just always staying popped. Somehow you could tell that he's like expressing even without the brows.
So he expresses by licking his lips a lot. All right, so what are your thoughts on this movie? You had thoughts.
Look, I didn't hate any of the action scenes.
No.
It's perfectly watchable for a popcorn film. Great.
That is because it's directed by Doug Liman, who I want to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So speaking of Doug Liman, I think Born Identity, right? And Go.
And Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But of course. So the guy has such a fucking great eye for composition and he just has like this rhythm every time there's like an action scene. It's just the volume that takes me off of it. If it was just like that one scene and then it's like, okay, go off into a room and talk or something. Yeah. But it's like scene after scene of just like action. I'm like, ugh.
Well, do you want me to learn you something about Doug Liman?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the reasons I wanted to do this movie is because I've always been interested in Doug Liman because he's made some really good films. Mm-hmm. He was on, coming into this movie, he was on like a heater of a rip. He did Swingers, excuse me. I was about to say something about The Wire, so I said Stringers. He did Swingers, Go, Born Identity, and then this. I think he did something in between, but it didn't matter. But he was like these were... He was like the next big thing, right?
Yeah.
Later in his career, he makes Edge of Tomorrow, which is kind of a sci-fi classic at this point.
I absolutely love that movie.
I love that movie too. And have you ever seen American Made with Tom Cruise?
No, but the trailer looks so great.
That movie is way better than it needs to be. And it's because you're like, what is Tom Cruise doing
in
like a $25 million crime film? And then you're like, it's like really good.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? Maybe I'll watch it today. Damn.
Okay. But the thing you said about Doug Liman being controlled and in composition, I have to say, you are wrong.
Oh, no.
Doug Liman is well known in Hollywood for being one of the most chaotic people to work with.
Okay. Like a personality-wise.
Like in the way he shoots and in the way, personality-wise. Okay. In the way that, now, about The Wire. Been rewatching The Wire, one of the greatest shows of all time. I don't need to tell anybody that, but I will reiterate how good it is. Mm-hmm. Jimmy McNulty in The Wire. Something you love about the guy is he's, as Rawls calls him, a huge gaping asshole. But you have to admit, you kind of like his insubordination. Yeah. Doug Liman is sort of that.
Doug Liman's the McNulty?
Doug Liman, so on Born Identity, that was almost, from what I gathered from this thing that let me see, what was it? It's in Variety. I read this, it was like an interview with him or a profile of him that came out shortly after he released the critically derided film Jumper. Mm-hmm. It was written by Ann Thompson. Yeah. Essentially, the impression I got was that like the experience of making the Born Identity was an almost 100% miserable time for everyone involved.
Oh, boy.
So Doug Liman makes Swingers, right?
Yeah.
And Swingers is like Jon Favreau, Vince Vaughn. He would shoot on this... He would shoot on a camera that was made for documentary filmmaking. The only problem was it was like shooting with a vacuum cleaner on your shoulder, so you can't hear dialogue and things like that.
Oh no!
So he would wrap it in a puffer jacket to cover the sounds of the camera. And as Jon Favreau said, I gleaned this from another article, but Jon Favreau said it was like acting in front of a puffy snowman. So he would do all these things, and he would shoot. They shot in Las Vegas, and they would shoot. I've never seen Swingers, so like I could be getting this wrong, but this is what I read is like they would just shoot at places unpermitted where parties were happening and just have real people around and just shoot because he had no money.
Yeah. And like Spring Break.
So very much like Spring Breakers. But like speaking of control, like Korean is like weirdly like more controlled than Doug Liman, I think. In that regard.
But from a perception view, right? From a user, I would have never known Doug Liman was like this chaotic entity because when you watch the movie, you don't see that chaos in the scenes. But it flows like, perfectly well.
He's like kind of brilliant, actually.
Yeah.
Like he is. And in Swingers, they do this very like guerrilla style filmmaking and they make this cult classic. The next movie he does is Go. And I know enough about Go because I've seen it one time, but I'm a big listener. I've mentioned it before of the Script Notes podcast with John August, who wrote Go. That was his big breakout.
Oh shit.
And it was just, again, like the studio was like, there's like a chase on the Las Vegas Strip in that film, and the studio was like, you can't make this. And he was like, okay. And then he went and did it anyway.
Yeah.
He would just go and do it.
Good man.
And he would like be his own camera operator. He's just like, he was such an indie filmmaker.
Amazing.
And then when it comes to Bourne Identity, he was like, okay, I'm going to operate the camera on this one.
Yeah.
A huge action film. And the studio, every step of the way, like the studio fought almost everything that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And eventually, I believe like they had to reshoot parts of Bourne with the producer stepping in to kind of like make it. But he would just constantly like, Liman would just constantly kind of tell the studio, it'd be like, yeah, I hear you. And then just go do the thing they told him not to do. And it's really admirable because sometimes he makes like really good fucking movies, you know?
So you're thinking like, when I was like, oh, it flows so well and the composition's great. Are you saying that it's like edited by someone else and they did let Doug do his thing and then someone else came and cleaned it up?
Yeah, sometimes I think that like, I think he so on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, he gives up a lot of his control. He stops camera operating. This is probably the biggest movie he's made to that date, right? Mm-hmm. But this movie, like I think what suffers is that it doesn't feel like a Doug Liman film, you know? There's something about like the way that if you think of Bourne Identity, there's a stylistic thing about Bourne Identity that has infected many action films.
Is it the green?
No, it's like it's the shaky cam.
Yeah.
It's the chaotic camera kind of like in your face, out of your face, moving around, bouncing around, shaking around the room, right? Which is like, that's a kind of a Doug Liman guerrilla filmmaking thing. Yeah. This movie is a lot more
cleaner.
It's a lot like, seems like more planned.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I find him like a fascinating figure because of that. I want to read a quote actually. This is from the former, I have to assume former Universal Pictures chairman. He has a chaotic and at times brilliant mind. For many involved with Doug on Bourne, the experience was too painful to contemplate ever doing it again, but he helped create a signature identity for Bourne. I would work with him again on the right project.
Look at that. Yeah.
You'd think lots of people, and I think Matt Damon can count himself among these people, would be like, I'm never doing that again. Then again, Tom Cruise has worked with him on 2 films. Tom Cruise is like, I think I love it. I think I gotta love what he's doing. Even though Tom Cruise now kind of makes just Mission Impossible, he loves Christopher McQuarrie a lot more. But like, Cruise made fucking Edge of Tomorrow, and then a couple years later goes and makes American Made, and it's like, clearly he's got something. But I don't know. I love the idea
because he has like such a great impact on everything that happens after the movie comes out.
But I think what bums me out is like why I find talking about Doug Liman so much more interesting is he feels so wasted on this movie.
Yeah.
And it feels like because of the Brangelina of it, his effect is diminished.
Definitely.
And diluted.
Yeah.
And you kind of forget it's a Liman picture.
Yeah.
It's also it's easier also to like take blame away from Liman.
Yeah.
Maybe it is his fault this movie fucking sucks. I don't think so though.
I don't think so.
Because like he makes these other movies where he gets to take big swings and fuck them up, or make Edge of Tomorrow. Which
exactly.
is like,
now that is plot driven, right?
Yeah.
Everything rests on something happening in the next scene that you have to wait for it to happen.
But I wonder too if that's like you're in a movie and you're Doug Liman, who has this reputation as a chaotic character, and Tom Cruise comes in and he's like, I'm Tom Cruise and I get to control this film.
Yeah.
All right, Doug, you can do whatever you like. Whereas maybe with Brangelina, it's like not that. Maybe it's kind of like, it's like, all right, Doug, we have to get you under control. But then you have to be under control.
I can't think of any film, even in recent times, that had the explosive chemistry that Brad and Jolie had. Like, not even romance, not action. They are the charismatic like face of the film, and it deservedly more than the director. Like, you don't need to, like, Michael Bay's name stands out in every film that he does because the characters suck. Like, no one gives a single fuck about anyone but Megan Fox. But then that's all you talk about is Michael Bay, action, trucks. But with movies this,
sorry, babe, it's not Megan Fox. Martin Lawrence is with Will Smith in Bad Boys. It's not Megan Fox. I think you're confusing the two.
Transformers? You get out of here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Get out of here.
No, that is a Martin Lawrence picture too.
Okay, yeah. You know when he turns into a truck.
That's Martin Lawrence and Shia LaBeouf.
Yes.
Yeah.
God.
You're confusing. It's easy to mix up Megan Fox and Martin Lawrence.
Martin Lawrence all the time.
Like lots of people do it. I don't blame you. But
lots of people say they look like Megan Fox all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, like we've seen. Fucking, they are the biggest deal in this movie.
Yeah, they are. But do you really think they're that charismatic?
100%.
Oh man, I disagree.
100%.
I think what little charisma they have is fighting against a tide of just awfulness that is this movie. I
feel like you can't even blink when they are doing the therapy scenes. It is just the most.
Of course.
In the start of the film, end of the film, sometimes in the middle of the film. I know this is an action movie and it's meant to be like car chases and knife throws, but every time they interact,
I completely disagree. I think one of the big problems I have with this movie, I'm going to throw a Doug Liman quote at you actually.
Ooh.
This was after, where was it? I think this was he was talking after Edge of Tomorrow. He says, "Okay, I think making a great action movie is one of the hardest cinematic endeavors. By definition, smart characters avoid action. Smart people don't go down dark alleys. But if you're making an action movie and you want to have an action sequence, somehow you have to get that character into that dangerous situation." Mm-hmm. Which I totally agree with. But this movie, and I think I would blame the writing for this, is like these characters are so colossally fucking stupid. They're like they have no thoughts. Like they don't like. It feels like the story is just happening in spite of them. It doesn't. Yeah, and they're sorry. Let me finish. Their charisma just like feels like it's like a nice thing to have. But if it was anyone else, it's kind of like this would be the problems would be so much more glaring if it wasn't Brad and Angelina. And yet I do think their charisma is diminished because they have to constantly fight against all of the crappy shit in this film.
But they are so overpowered as characters. Like you never fear for them. So I don't understand why the action scenes
that's just the problem, though,
right? Yeah. There is no real thrill from the action itself. It's just the interaction between them during the action scene that is the thrill. Like, will they make it? Will they not? With each other, not in life. Right?
I don't know if I feel
they're not going to get shot at. They're like 50 guys are shooting at them and nothing happens for 2 hours. Come on. They're like,
there's very little tension.
Yeah. So as an audience, I'm like, yeah, they're not going to fucking die. It's fine. So I'm just looking at their faces.
Okay. If you could recast this film,
I was thinking that
who would you recast it as, and why would it be Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher? Tell me. Tell me that.
That's actually perfect. Yeah, that's fucking.
It would be such a disaster.
Yeah, but even like across genres, I was thinking like, what would a fucking horror Mr. and Mrs. Smith be? Like, what would a thriller? What would a sci-fi Mr. and Mrs. Smith be? And Lakeith Stanfield was one big name. I feel like he would be
Lakeith and Donald Glover. That would be great.
That would
Mr.
be
and
fucking
Mr. Smith.
Mr. and Mr. Smith. Hell yeah. And like Jake Gyllenhaal would be a fucking great Mr. Smith.
I don't know. I've seen Jake Gyllenhaal in Ambulance.
Your girl
I don't know.
Becky would be a great Mrs. Smith.
Maybe.
She would just need someone who's 16 feet tall to offset.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think that this movie just feels like such just a void of charisma. And to me, I don't know, like something about it, which is weird because it does have the two most charismatic, beautiful people alive at that time, you know?
And this is probably the first time I saw this movie to completion like this, because every time when I was younger and this movie was on, it was just surrounded by all these references, by like all the cultural significance of like, oh, their child are adopting, or oh, more shit in the news. And
child singular, babe. Have you seen the news recently?
the village they adopted, like they're doing it. And so at that point you're like, all right, I think I've seen enough of this film.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny. I was looking for, it's hard because I was looking for like retrospective reviews, or maybe like people being like Mr. and Mrs. Smith 15 years later or whatever, revisiting. And it's hard to find right now on Google because A, Google is terrible. And B,
now it's the TV
every
show.
Review is about the TV show, right?
Yeah.
But I did see an interesting Reddit post rant thing on the movies or television subreddit or whatever, where it was just titled Mr. and Mrs. Smith Revisionism, and I was like, what is this? And the guy was like, okay, I assume it has to be a guy because it's Reddit, but he's like, okay, can we all stop pretending that everyone loved the film Mr. and Mrs. Smith now that there's just a decent TV show about it? He was like, this movie was never good. Yeah. And I was like, I gotta say, I kind of like agree. It was like the Bohemian Rhapsody kind of revisionism about Queen we were talking about. Sure. But like, that's kind of what fooled me into thinking this might be a decent movie. And then I was like, it never was.
Did you think good, like it'd be like Born Identity, like plot leading?
No.
No.
I just thought it would be like, I have heard Mr. and Mrs. Smith revisionism, but I think people look back fondly at the time when Brangelina was
That's exactly it.
The cultural moment.
That reset is what makes the impact.
Yeah, without wanting to be like, yeah, but the film is not very... Yeah.
What is it, like... It's like hour 45, just like fight scenes. And then you have like 30 minutes.
That leads to like nothing. And I have to say, something I read too was that like, I mean, good on Brad and Angelina for being like, I think a quote I saw in the Wikipedia was like, they didn't greenlight a sequel because none of the ideas were, quote, good enough. And I was like, good. That's like, because if this was a different era, maybe like 15 years later.
Oh, totally.
We would
There'd be like all-girl spy agency, and then Angelina Jolie would do a little cameo and be like,
there would be a television spin-off of the spy agency with Michelle Monaghan and Kerry Washington and all that shit being like which is essentially Charlie's Angels, right? Yeah.
Next time Adam Brody would show up with a Babel shirt instead of a Fight Club shirt like he cheekily wears when he talks to Brad Pitt. That was such a great little moment.
It's very 2005.
Fucking classic.
It's funny because like our pod is a lot based on like revising feelings about older films, certainly from 2005, the greatest cinema year of all time.
Greatest fucking year.
But like, this is definitely one that just I'm not revising.
But the reviews speak for it, right? Like, nobody is crazy in love with it. Like the way it was just talked about because it was the hottest thing people perceive.
But today, people our age who remember the vibe around the time might feel differently about it, right? Might be like, oh yeah, I fondly remember seeing Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It was like, you know what movie I haven't watched since I saw it in theaters, but I was like, wasn't that a good movie? Which I don't think it is. Yeah. Is like, it's this Colin Farrell, Al Pacino movie called The Recruit that I think I might have been like one of the only people. But it's like, I don't know if it's good or not. I just remember seeing it in theaters and being like, bad. Oh man. Well, yeah. But like, and also I think Colin Farrell was probably drunk the entire time he was filming it. But it's like one of those things where I'm like, it's one of like, I rewatch a lot of old movies. And that's like one of the ones where I'm like, it's very rare for me to be like, I've only seen this movie once, unless I hated it. But like this movie, I was like, no, I liked it, but I've only seen it once. But it was like impossible to find. But I'm sure I would rewatch and be like, no, I see why people didn't like this movie.
I think I've seen The Recruit like 5 times.
Crazy. I believe they made a show based on that property. Yeah.
And I was actually excited for it, but it was not good. And then and the only reason I went and like rewatched it so many times because I would search for SWAT and it would just not be available.
Oh yeah.
So I'd end up I'll settle for Recruit.
You know what movie this I thought was going to be like, actually? I wanted to bring this up, and this is a movie we are definitely going to cover. It's a Scott Fest favorite, which I don't know if it's good or not, but I've seen it like a bunch of times. Spy Game.
Oh, no
also
idea.
Starring Brad Pitt. You've never seen Spy Game?
I've never seen Spy Game.
Oh, it's a Tony Scott movie. It's like serious, but also just awesome. Okay. We're going to talk about this movie eventually, so I don't want to talk too strongly about it. But it stars Brad Pitt and Robert Redford. Brad Pitt is like a young spy who Robert Redford trains to be like a spy, right? But then it's like told in this series of like flashbacks where Robert Redford is being interrogated about Brad Pitt's whereabouts because he's disappeared. And like he tells everything, the story of where Brad Pitt is led up to. And like I don't know, it's just like a fun spy movie, but it's like serious. And when they flash back to like Bogota in this film, I was kind of like, is this going to be like a spy game? It's not. Okay. It does not. Spy Game totally. But again, Spy Game is like a movie that I'm sure lots of people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? The movie is so okay. Yeah. But I think it's great.
Every time they throw back to Bogota or whatever, they're like, yeah, bring out that documentary camera.
Yeah.
With the hard fucking saturated filter on.
Yeah, dude. All right, do you want to talk about the plot of this?
You know what movie? Plot again, right? But yes, they keep fighting.
The thing is, like this movie has like too much plot while simultaneously not a lot happens.
Correct.
So we can let's just go by feel on this one.
I agree.
So in my opinion, the only interesting or good scene are the therapist scenes. Like those are the only like
hands
good
down.
things.
Hands down.
And they start off in therapy talking about their relationship. It turns out they're both spies. They're both assassins, essentially. They're not spies, they're assassins. This is not Spy Game. This is Assassins
This is a murder game. Yeah.
Murder Game. Yeah. Man, that's a good title for a movie.
Murder Game.
We should totally make okay, I'm gonna bleep that out so we can totally make that as a film.
Okay, yeah.
Murder Game.
Murder Game. No one steal this. God.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're assassins. They're murder gaming, and they are assigned to kill Adam Brody, one of our favorites. We have to shout out because we didn't in our Academy Award thing.
Oh,
Adam Brody is so fucking good in American Fiction.
Mwah.
This is a spoiler for people. Well, not really. I don't have to spoil it. The last scene he's in, though, with Jeffrey Wright is just like one of my favorite scenes. Yeah.
So
wonderful.
good. So good. And he looks the same. He's another Brangelina in himself.
I mean, I love he's
that
like,
man doesn't age.
We talked about Topher Grace. Like, he's someone who just wasn't doing a lot after the OC. And now as like a 40-year-old man, he's come back and you're just kind of like, oh, he's so good. He's so good in that show. The Fleischman is murder gaming.
Yeah,
and
he's so good. He basically plays that kind of character in American Fiction.
Yeah,
and it's like that's his personality.
He's
I feel
great.
like I can't see him any other way.
Yeah. Anyway, so they are assigned to kill Adam Brody. It goes wrong, and they find out that they have to kill each other. Is that what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They find out that they have to target someone who's at this address, and they both end up realizing, that's my husband or that's my wife.
Oh my God, that's my address.
That's my Smith.
Oh, I have to say too, when you find out that Angelina's secret stash of weapons is stored in the oven.
Yeah.
I gotta say that's sexist as hell.
Well, yeah, because she's a homemaker. She doesn't.
Also, like it's
she has a job.
It's such like she's a murder.
Oh yeah, she's
murder
the CEO
assassin,
of Thumbprint.
No, she's like her cover is that she's like a tech security expert, but also the perfect homemaker and hot as hell. And her thing is in the oven, but also it's like such a Mad Men kind of like, well, Brad would never look there. He has no business in the oven.
Yeah. Well, he's in construction. What does that mean?
Yeah,
he's in
whatever.
construction.
Stupid. Also, Vince Vaughn is in this. But
fucking
whatever.
Vince Vaughn just looking like fucking Vince Vaughn did, just perpetually
just being
34.
Vince Vaughn too.
Yeah.
Just like being himself. Yeah. Essentially, like, they're assigned to kill each other because of this botched job by the Charlie. Like,
sure. They're independent agencies from both their agencies. They're like, kill the other one. You kill the other one.
Angelina's agencies is the Charlie's Angels and Brad's is nobody.
Yeah.
Is Vince Vaughn.
It's a grandpa on his team.
Yeah.
It's like, great.
Yeah. And then, they get in a big fight. They trash their entire house, but then they get to the point where they're going to kill each other. And he's like, I can't do it. I still love you.
Oh.
Great.
And then they keep fighting.
Well, they have a
together.
passionate, They fight in the sheets.
Yeah. They Brangelina.
And then they're attacked by faceless CIA operatives.
Sure, bunch of Mr. Smiths.
Yeah,
oh,
huge set piece where they're attacked. Again, we're playing this on the TV, and I'm like, I don't even remember why this is happening. What's going on right now? But that's okay.
It's his phony construction unit.
Yeah, whatever. They're attacked. They go on this big car chase,
and
then finally they're like, we have to kill Adam Brody again and get out of this.
And then they find out, oh no, Adam Brody, you're not the target. We're the target.
And then people come to kill them.
But then they're like, we can do this, babe.
Yeah.
And they have...
The power of marriage is stronger than the power...
Thank you. That's exactly
The power of marriage is stronger than the power of
bullets.
Of guns. Yeah.
Guns don't kill people, but marriage definitely does.
Kills people, yeah. And then I do like, which I think is like an inspired idea that gets no play, is that they get in a fight in a fake homeware store. Like a full of like all these, which I'm kind of like, that's an interesting metaphorical idea, but also wasted.
They're like, Brad comes out in like a change of dress, and he's like, he's wearing a suit, and then Angelina comes out and like, I will also wear a suit.
Yeah.
Pantsuit.
She gets shot.
Yeah.
And then they do a choreographed dance dance off where they kill people.
Ugh.
Also, they do dance earlier in the film, and nobody notices, like when Brad Pitt smashes the back of her head against a pillar.
And then throws a knife across the room into another pole.
Yeah.
Don't
in
matter.
the middle of the dance floor.
No, that's because they're all 95 years old.
It's wild. Do you think that happens at like every like wedding and just people don't notice?
I don't ever come out of a wedding unscathed.
Hey, neither do the people getting married. Am I right?
Am I right?
Am I right, ladies? Hey.
Marriage, the ultimate weapon.
Back in their therapist's office, they're like, yeah, we're fuck. And then that's the end of the movie.
But it's such a good ending because he's like, ask me that sex question. And then he just whispers 10.
Yeah,
and
it's like
funny.
But that's like
cute.
The only point when they really have charm. And
Yeah.
I do think like I have to guess, and I didn't look this up, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like they're improvising.
I feel like that too.
I feel like
Brad Pitt is so funny.
Brad Pitt is naturally a funny person. And I think Jolie is like, she's improvising too. But I do feel like a lot of those scenes though, because Brad Pitt is very funny.
Yeah.
I feel like she's trying not to laugh.
Yeah,
like
she's
there's like
honey.
Yeah. I feel like she's actually trying not to laugh.
Oh,
but that's the thing. That's like
He's so charming.
Their magical chemistry exists in those scenes.
Totally.
It does not really exist elsewhere.
It's enough to carry it, man. Look at their faces. I could watch this whole movie on mute, like I'm sure most people did. There's this one part where Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are trying to get out of the house, and there's an agent outside, and he's like, oh, God damn it, they get younger every year, these fuckers. And he gets out of the car, kicks him, and then does a little second kick, and that shit cracked me up. It's the classic, like, Brad Pitt 1-2 flailing kick to a body that's already down. There's so many like tiny little moments of just Brad being Brad, and it's worth watching just for him alone.
I don't know if it is, man. The weird thing is like if we were doing this, we were talking about this like 6 months ago, I would be like, man, this movie is gonna be forgotten to time. And then it's like, no, Prime is making a series
it's a stamp in history
based on the idea.
Yeah. But it feels like it's very different from the movie.
Yeah.
And right away they know they're both spies in the first episode.
But the first episode, from what I saw, there's like no action at all. It doesn't seem.
No.
Yeah.
They meet as like, oh, you're a spy too, me too. All right, we're assigned on this thing together.
Do they have to pretend to be
husband and wife? Yeah.
But they don't know each other beforehand. So they're like falling in love.
They meet at the agency that trained them.
So it's like the Americans.
It's the Americans.
The show The Americans.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe we'll progress into that.
They're fucking in that one.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Well, you've never seen it. I watched the
I've only seen those scenes. So it's the Brangelina Jolie.
Well, they did have to have
show.
2 kids in The Americans, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're like paired together. They don't. Yeah. You've never watched The Americans, have you?
No.
Okay, so in that show, I just got to express that like Matthew Rhys is in it, who's one of our favorites.
Love him.
Greatest Welshman to ever live. And he like has to carry on a fake relationship with another woman too, and other fake like casual relationships with other women.
Oh, get it.
And there's like, there's like times where he just seems like exhausted. He's like, everywhere I go, all 4 of these ladies want to suck my dick. It's like, I'm out. I'm dried up. I'm tapped out, bro. Wow. I can't pretend to have too many relationships.
Hard out here, but also not for Mr.
It's tough
Rhys.
out there for Matthew Rhys. And then fucking Kerry Russell is like, I don't fuck anybody.
Yeah, no sexless presence.
It's a really good show, though. It's really good.
Yeah. Woo!
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, baby.
The Americans of cinema. Sure.
Always have been. I think I watched the show, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of crappy TV that I don't want to see, though. So I kind of.
Now that we got Tokyo Vice coming up.
Yeah, Tokyo
quality
Vice 2.
programs lined up.
Obviously, rewatching The Wire. That's
100%.
Probably rewatch The Deuce after that, because The Deuce. Now, I do have to say, because not many people saw it, The Deuce is one of the greatest shows ever made.
Oh, amen.
And only a few people really watched it, and it's fucking amazing.
Watch The Deuce. 2 Francos for the price of 1.
Yeah.
And it's the same Franco.
Nowadays, that's not a very entertaining prospect. But he's good in that show, but usually...
Yeah.
If you can get past the fact that it's James Franco and all of the stuff he's done as a person.
Double the James.
Yeah. Double Franks.
Double Franks.
All right. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you got anything more to say about it?
Just that I want to see that Lakeith Gambino combo.
Mr. and Mr. Smith.
Mr. and Mr. Smith, bring it to life.
Mr. and Mr. Smith go to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That would be an amazing twist at the end of the crime show, is if he's actually, I met somebody.
Yeah.
Like, I know we've fallen in love by being spies and stuff,
Exactly.
but I met someone.
That's
and
right.
It's Lakeith Stanfield, and Lakeith is like, oh, awesome.
And he's just like, he is in Atlanta. He's just a little cutie. He was like, yeah, I'm just here.
That's my impression of Lakeith Stanfield. Awesome.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I
Damn.
sound exactly like
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Chill guy. Best guy.
Thank you for listening. It's been a low ceiling.
I'm Pri.
I'm Jon. Always have been. As far as I'm concerned.